Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. My name is Linda Thompson, as Diana said, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. There's some familiar faces that I can see around the room, so it's lovely to see you all again. I'm really delighted for the opportunity to present today, and how timely is it with the announcement that was out in the media today about age verification systems and pornography. I thought, well, isn't that either a coincidence or very fortuitous timing of it all? As Dame Diana said, I'm the National Coordinator for Commercial Sexual Exploitation, including pornography, with the Women's Support Project, which is a Scottish charity. My post, and I think this is important to note in the context of the inquiry this afternoon, my post is funded by the Scottish Government through Violence Against Women and Girls money under the Equality Unit, because as many of you will know, in Scotland, we do have a strategy, Equally Safe, and our strategic position from 2008 onwards in Scotland has clearly named pornography as a form of violence against women. My job is really to support the understanding of the Scottish Government's approach, seeing pornography as a form of violence against women, raise awareness across Scotland, build capacity, improve service responses, develop resources and information, and engage with women about their lived experience. So it's quite a broad remit. And I think the importance of that is that I was sitting thinking about what could I use my 5 minutes for that hasn't already been said in the previous two evidence sessions, and that hasn't already been covered or be covered this afternoon. And you've probably seen me nodding very vigorously to a lot of what Perna was saying. I'm thinking, well, I'll take that out of my input that's been covered, because we've heard before in the panels, you know, about the scale of the industry, the size of the industry. So I thought, okay, what I will come from is from a practice-based perspective. And what I have discovered and heard over the past 13 years working in this post around pornography and its role within violence against women. I do think it's important to note, and whilst I think it is excellent that this inquiry has happened, in the past 13, 14 years, there's been a lot of inquiries that have named pornography as a contributing factor in violence against women. So this is not a new concept, as we all know in this room. You know, if you think right back 2009, you know, the European Union, they commissioned a report that highlighted pornography as a factor in violence against women. British Board of Classification 2012, Children's Commissioner's Report in 2013, the National Strategy to End Violence Against Women 2016. So what I'm trying to say is, I think we know the role of pornography in violence against women, and I'm really particularly interested in the action part of it all. And I think many academics, you know, Maddie Coy, Maria Garner, Liz Kelly, they have clearly articulated across the disciplines about the links between pornography and violence against women. It's recognized from 1995 onward in Beijing. So what I'm saying is, we know the research is there, the evidence is there about the harm and the impacts of pornography. So what I thought it was, I would bring to the fore the challenges, because in Scotland, we have had this understanding from 2008 and clearly named, and we see pornography as a form of violence against women in and of itself, as well as contributing to the broader cultural harm and the impact on our culture that creates a conducive context in many ways for violence against women to happen. But whenever I've been going out trying to talk about the Scottish Government's approach, about a feminist understanding, about a gender-based violence perspective on it, across the years, I've met many people who do not want to engage in the conversation. And that's actually, to put it politely. It is a taboo subject. I've been deemed with suspicion. I got labelled at one stage, there's the porn woman, which is an interesting title to have. And the reason why I share that is it's very difficult in many contexts to get people to engage with a conversation about pornography and the porn industries. Many people are incredibly discomfortable talking about it. I do remember one particular Scottish minister. We were actually holding an event about extreme pornography in 2009, and he could not bring himself to say the word. And whenever I asked him, why won't you not say the word pornography? He went, I don't want a clip of me online saying pornography. And I thought, if our national leaders cannot even say the word, then we're really on a sticky wicket here on this. I think for a lot of people around the concept and looking about what do we do about pornography, it seems so overwhelming. As Perner said, you know, we have 3 hours uploaded every minute onto Pornhub. So very often people can feel like it's too big. How do we even start to tackle this? And we have a saying in Scotland, well, if you want to eat an elephant, you have to start somewhere. And you find your bit to take off and chew. There's real fear about becoming involved and looking to move forward into action about pornography. Why? Because as we know, many women online and in the online environments face extreme misogyny and sexism. And if you raise your head and you're a woman or anyone who discusses or frames pornography as problematic, then you will see the outpouring of hate that will come your way. And actually it serves as a silencer and does not create the space for the conversations we need. But we have to recognize there's a very well-funded and vocal opposition who do not want any action or any developments to be taken around pornography. And I think what I find really interesting, and I do bring it up because I think we have to confront this if we're looking to move forward around pornography, is that, you know, very often we're said, well, it's two consenting adults, it's doing nobody else any harm. And, you know, if you don't like it, just turn it off. So the concepts of consent and choice come into these conversations and they're silenced immediately. We know, and I'm not going to go into it, how the notion that it is two consenting adults somehow just coming together and having sex and they're filmed and somebody decides to share it. It completely ignores the expansion of the industries based on the profit, as Perna has said. You know, we know that over lockdown in September 2020, we had 26 million people in the United Kingdom watching pornography, 15 million on Pornhub alone, a third of young women, 3/4 of young men. So the consumption is huge. And, you know, whilst we've all been having the debates and the inquiries and we have led to more consultations, and meanwhile, the porn industry has exploded. And I do remember in 2008 presenting about pornography from the porn journals themselves, the industry journals, and what they wanted was that pornography would be available 24 hours in your pocket. Well, if we think about, you know, 3/4 of pornography is consumed by mobile devices, the porn industry has achieved what it wanted to achieve, whilst we have all stalled in our conversations. So it's a real call to action. We know pornography is a form of violence against women. It is not just fantasy, it is the reality for the women involved. So it is not just a representation of sex, it is actual sexual violence that is occurring to the women. And I think there's a disconnect between consumers and what the actual reality that is experienced by the women. The women are shown to either enjoy it or have no reaction. And I'm not going to dwell here, but we know there's been numerous accounts from women within the porn industry, the more mainstream studio-based porn industry, that clearly articulate the rape and sexual violence that happens in the production of pornography. We only have to look at the experience of women with James Dean, the poster boy for consent via kink.com, and the questionable ideas around how he practices consent with his sexual partners, both on and off set. But I want to bring forward the other women involved in pornography who aren't involved in the mainstream studios, so who aren't involved in kink.com browsers, etc. These are everyday women. And through the Encompass network that I coordinate, frontline services that support women involved in commercial sexual exploitation, I want to share some of those lived experiences that we don't tend to hear about in these inquiries. You know, I have worked directly with women in prostitution whose rape has been filmed and shared on pornography sites. I've worked with vulnerable women who agreed that they could be filmed with punters, but didn't know what was going to happen with that. They agreed that they could be filmed. Meanwhile, somebody else sold their images on, meanwhile, other people are profiting, and women will say, I don't know who's watching that anymore. So we have to think of the reality of some of these women that the end consumer do not consider, that they see it uploaded as amateur porn, when in fact it's women with very, very, very complex needs, that their disadvantage and their inequality has been taken advantage of. We've worked with trafficked women whose rape and sexual abuse was recorded by their traffickers as another means to make profit, and that their images end up on mainstream porn sites, including Pornhub. We have also worked with women who have sold their images online, but their images have been stolen, their films have been stolen non-consensually and shared on mainstream porn sites. So the reason what I'm highlighting, or I want to highlight, is that whenever we think about the content that is produced, the 3 hours per minute that's uploaded, who's involved in making that content? Who is it? It is not just women that's involved in supposedly made a conscious site to be performers in the porn industry. It's highly vulnerable women, and it is based on non-consent. So actually the porn industry promotes itself as two consenting adults, but our reality as practice, as workers, as services, we know that women's rape and sexual abuse have been filmed and are then sexualized and available online. We also know through our work, directly through our work, And with workers across violence against women, we know how pornography is a part and parcel of other forms of abuse, like domestic abuse. We know historically pornography has been used as part of the grooming process for child sexual assault. It is no different for women in terms of the violence that they experience from their partners. We know women have been forced to watch it. We know women have been forced to reenact it. Women have been forcibly filmed, and that's been then used as a threat. But also in a conversation with women's aid workers last week about pornography and domestic abuse, nearly all of them said that it is incredibly difficult for women to talk about that particular form of their abuse. It is a taboo, and women feel great shame around the use of pornography as part of their coercive control and their domestic abuse. So we have to confront it as a tool in other forms of violence against women. And as Perner said, we know the cultural harm that enacts from it. I think the research is clearly there over the past 13, 14 years. And the body of research and the meta-analysis is just building that leads to, and I'm sure others in the panel, particularly Jackson, maybe talk about the impact on young men and normative scripts and sexual violence. But I think for me, I think we need to confront the reality that pornography does have an impact. It does contribute to a conducive culture. And young people are impacted, but I think we focus a lot on young people and somehow assume that adults aren't. But I was talking over the weekend with a group of young men, all in their early 20s, and they all admitted that they basically have come of age in the porn culture and discussing the impact directly with them. And they clearly articulate the impact. They know what it has done to them. They talked very clearly about what it has done to their attitudes, their values, and their behaviors. So we have young men themselves saying this has had an impact on me. I spoke with a small group of young women, 14-year-olds, and we were talking about pornography and the impact on pornography, and not just their sex lives and their relationships, but their everyday world. And they felt that they have no choice not to be exposed and somehow brought into this porn culture in their personal relationships, their interpersonal relationships. And as one young woman said, you know, that she realized at the age of 12 that she was now a category in pornography. So this is the reality in our young people's lives and in our adults' lives. And I think I will finish with the call to action. How do we bite off a bit of this elephant and start chewing it in many ways? I think we need a multifaceted, comprehensive, long-term approach. Legislation is one part of the toolkit, but we need much, much broader than that. Any work that is developed must have a feminist underpinning and an understanding that this is informed by gender-based violence. It needs to be embedded in strategies across government departments, not just sitting in justice, not just sitting in violence against women and equalities. This is an issue across government departments, and it needs to be prioritized at that level. We need to hear the voices of practice-based and workers across support services who see the impact day and daily. We need to allow women who've been affected by it to have safe spaces to articulate their experiences. We need to reframe this as part of the continuum of violence against women, as part of the continuum of image-based abuse. We need to create the safe spaces for these courageous conversations to happen, where, as we know, that it's not particularly safe because of the backlash that people are likely to face. We need to ensure that education is dealing with this, but you know what? It's a lot to ask of education, that somehow one session once a year for 3 years with young people is going to provide the inoculation against a whole porn culture. It's a heavy weight for teachers and young people to carry, but we do need to continue and invest in it. In Scotland, we've got the Male Violence Reduction Project. Jackson, I know you're well familiar with it. We also have wonderful work happening across the rape crisis services with prevention workers in schools. We have absolutely incredible pieces of work happening. We have it named in our curriculum for excellence in Scotland. So we need to further ensure that this education, and in fact, that there's more of porn literacy being taught. We need campaigns to challenge the narrative that porn is sex. We need a broad-based harm reduction and support for women who are involved and who've been affected, and a support to exit out of the porn industry if and when they want to. And we need a complete review of legislation. And I think its legislation ensures that it's fit for purpose right the whole way through different facets of the porn industry, from production to distribution, to selling, to consumption, the whole way through. We really need to reflect upon what legislation is needed. And I think we need to hold porn accountable, and the porn industry is accountable for the harm and the costs that come from them making huge profit of sexualized violence.